Welcome to Super Talk, the podcast that scratches your superhero itch. Just two suburban dads nerding out over superhero stuff on the small screen and the big. Buckle up, people. Enjoy the ride. All right, Professor, like a gentleman, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Sir. In 3.
Welcome to Super Talk, the weekly podcast dedicated to news and reviews of comic book media on the big and small screen. This is episode 125. I'm your host, Brian Professor Pettis, and with me, as always, my illustrious co-host, Titanium Tony Estrella.
Professor.
We got a lot to talk about today.
So, yeah, we do. Let's jump right into it. Yeah. I'm not going to lollygag.
It's a full agenda today. We've got two new episodes to review. And we have a topic of the week that I know you and I are both passionate about. So let's jump into it. So let's first thank the listeners that bring the show to you. And those are our patrons. Patreon.com/supertalk is how you become a member. Just check us out. Patreon.com/supertalk. If you want to become a member of the patronship, support the show directly. We really appreciate all the help out there from all of our listening audience. All right, let's jump into the review section. We had 2 new episodes this past week. One of the reasons why we're here, because we love the new content. Let's start off with Gen V, episode 5. Episode 5. This show keeps delivering, man.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I didn't see it coming. I know there's a lot of good twists and stuff, but I did not see
the twist.
Kate as a manipulative.
I knew she was sketchy
really,
the whole time.
I thought it was Andre, but whatever.
Well, the fact that Kate very quickly flipped from sleeping with Golden Boy to sleeping with Andre, and I was like, well, that was fast. Like, yeah. She changed teams really quickly. She always kind of rubbed me, just like something was going on with her.
Yeah.
And let's tell people what we're talking about. So, at the end of episode 4, Sam had confronted the psychologist who was doing experiments on him, and the team, or the kids from the college, show up to stop him. A little fight ensues. Cricket gets really huge, eats a big bowl of spaghetti, and gets super huge and stops him. And then the episode ended with Marie in bed with Jordan, and she didn't really realize how she got there. Like, she just blacked out, and all of a sudden she's in bed with Jordan.
And they're at some huge party.
They're at a rager.
Yeah.
They were at some rager. And they don't remember where they are, how they got there. And Marie thought it was like her. Like, something's wrong with me. What's going on? I don't remember anything.
Right.
Then as talking to the other kids, they all realized they didn't know how they got there and how long they had been there. And they just chalked it up to, hey, man, we must have had like a massive party last night.
And they're starting to look at their phones, and they're seeing video of them partying and having a good time, but their memory is wiped. And then they start to realize that, well, wait a minute, it's Saturday, and I like days.
There's 2 days missing.
Yeah, there's like days missing. Like, somebody wiped us, and they think it's this kid Rufus who Marie had an encounter with before,
whose dick she blew up.
The dick explosion kid, who apparently is fine. I don't know how he's fine, but he's still walking around. And they're trying to find him and confront him, and he's like trying to tell them, "Hey, man, it's not me. My powers only work for 3 hours, and I can't wipe days and memories. That's not my doing." So it was definitely pointing towards somebody with a little bit more.
Well, and at one point in time, they're all kind of at this house where this party was, and at one point in time, Emma's still one of the best people on this show. They find her passed out in the pool. In giant size. She's like lying in the pool as her big self, and but Emma and Marie are talking, and they're trying to realize, well, we don't know how we got here, and we're missing some time. What's going on, And then Emma sees pictures on her phone of her like chugging kegs as a giant person. It was hysterical. But Sam shows up. And it's like, Emma, I've been looking for you. I couldn't find you. Where are you?
They don't remember who he is.
And they're like, whoa. Like,
who the hell are you?
You're dangerous, and get away from us. And they don't recognize him.
Yeah.
And that was like strange to him. He's like, what's going on
here? Then
he
realized what was going on, and he knows what's going on.
So they must have done it to you. They did it to you too. and he runs off.
They made Luke forget me. Yeah.
Yes, right. They made Luke forget. And that's right. What he said.
Yeah.
And then so they all, to your point, they all were blaming this kid Rufus because of what happened to Marie. Well, it must be Rufus. He's wiping our memories. And Andre's pissed, and he's like, I'm gonna go get this MFer.
Yeah.
Right. And he confronts him, and throws him up against the wall with his magnetism powers. And then Rufus makes him black out, and he wakes up in his room and is like, damn it, it happened to me again, So that kind of led them to believe that he was behind all of this.
Yeah.
Well, Marie, all of a sudden she can feel something in her neck, and she uses her powers to pull this thing that she
tracker,
can feel that's in her her neck, and she pulls it. It's a tracking device, and she finds it in her neck, tells Jordan about it. Jordan has one in her neck. She pulls Jordan's out as well. She has one in her neck. So all the kids had tracking devices planted into their necks without their knowledge, and they're like, all right, now this is messed up. Something's going on here, right? They were pretty pissed. And they're like, we're going to go confront Rufus and get to the bottom of this. And eventually they kind of figured out that, wait a minute, Rufus couldn't have done this.
Yeah, he was telling people, and his roommate was confirming it. And then...
He's like, I was here all night. I wasn't near you
Right.
guys. I have to be in your proximity to do this
Yeah.
to you. I was nowhere near any of you.
Right.
And the video proved that he wasn't near there. And so they're like, okay, what's going on?
So Marie goes to Kate and confides in her, and Kate goes, do I have one in my neck? And as she tries to feel around for it, she touches her, and the next thing you know, she blacks out.
Marie does.
Yeah.
Right. And
so that's when we know Kate is...
Yeah, and eventually at the end of the episode, we kind of, they all confront her and realize that it's her that did this, and she's like, I'm sorry, I had no choice, and that's kind of how the episode ended. But
well, she touches Andre, and she gives Andre back all of his memories, and he's like, you're a fucking monster, And
right.
I think that was the episode called Welcome to the Monster Club. So really good, great writing, and we've said this before. Great writing you can overlook a lot of things with some really good writing and storytelling, and this show keeps delivering.
The plot,
yeah,
the storyline, it's compelling. There's something new every episode that kind of gets our attention, something that draws us in and kind of keeps us interested. You and I have talked a lot about our fear of the Marvels movie that's coming out very shortly in a few weeks. Is that they're teaming up this group of B-list female characters, and they're making this team together. Hoping
that was generous. That
was
generous. B-list.
Yeah.
That was generous.
Hoping that we're going to like the movie, and I think there's a significant interest, and I'm not sure if this is a Disney thing or an industry thing, of we need to empower female characters and show that we have female superheroes too. And we were just talking about before we started the show tonight, I'm like, well, Gen V has several female characters that we knew nothing about before the show started.
They're in lead roles.
And they're in and we like them, and we enjoy watching them, and they're compelling to us. So write good characters that we care about. Get us interested in them, and we'll watch them. Don't shove characters that we have no interest in down our throats, hoping that we'll like them, right?
Well, that's exactly what Marvel's done with the Marvels. And I'm really fearful of that movie, and we can get into it.
Save it, because we got a topic about that. So
I definitely want to jump on that a little bit.
All right, so let's jump into the other review. So Loki had season 2 of episode 2 of season 2 came out this past week as well, and you had expressed some fears last week about the confusing nature of the show, and how there's all this time jumping in different periods and stuff that's going on, and this episode did not quell those fears. It actually extended them to some extent. But I think what we did get was at least some idea of what Loki and Mobius are trying to do to kind of figure things out. They're confused as well. I mean, you can tell. So they're trying to find Sylvie. They realize at the end of episode 1, we got to find Sylvie. We have a feeling that either she's involved in this, or she's at risk, or we need her help. And the only lead they had was Hunter X5, who is General Vox's kind of weird relationship guy from episode 1. They noticed that his tracker, or his time pad, had gone offline, in 1977 on the Sacred Timeline.
Yeah.
In London. So Mobius and Loki go to London in 1977 to try to find him, and come to find out he's living another life.
Yeah.
He's created a new life for himself as an actor, Brad Wolfe, starring in the premiere of his movies premiering in London that night. And Zaniac. And they find him there, and they're like, "Yeah, it's time for you to come back." And he's like, "No, come on, this is like my time to shine. I gotta
right.
Let me kind of live this out." And then they end up having this chase, and Loki uses his powers a few times to kind of take advantage of him and
that was cool. We got to see some of Loki's powers back.
Yeah, and that's, we keep forgetting that when he's in the TVA, he doesn't have access to those powers, but when he's back on Earth, he does have access to those powers. And we got a good demonstration of how powerful he is and what he can do. And people forget, he's a Norse god. He's been granted these abilities, and he was able to kind of get him pretty quickly. Well, they bring him back to the TVA and interrogate him, and the whole interrogation room situation with Loki and Mobius and him, I thought was awesome.
Yeah.
They play good cop, bad cop, because as Hunter X5, he knows the interrogation techniques. He knows.
I like that character too. He is a
smart
smartass and brazen, and I think he's a great actor. I mean, that chemistry is awesome.
Yeah, but he calls out Loki, he calls out Mobius. They're having some. He's basically like, "I'm not telling you guys anything. You're not going to get anything out of me." Well, Loki finds the way to use the interrogation machine, which is a brilliant invention. They create these cubes that you can like lock somebody in and then keep shrinking it. And eventually he comes clean, and he lets them know, look, General Vox is going to be purging all the rogue timelines, and I have an idea of where
that's
Sylvie
exactly
is.
why he was on the Sacred Timeline,
because he knew that one wasn't going to be purged.
Correct.
He wanted to stay safe and stay away from everything.
Right.
But he knows where Sylvie is, and he says he can take him to her. And then they do end up finding Sylvie in Oklahoma, as we saw at the end of the post-credit scene of episode 1. She's in Oklahoma in like 1982, I believe, in Oklahoma, working at a McDonald's. And she loves it there, and she doesn't want to leave. She's like very happy. It's a very simple life, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with Loki or Mobius. They kind of tell her what's going on, and she's like, "Look, I don't want to have anything to do with this. It's your problem." And they're like, "Look, you're going to get purged.
You could be in danger here." She enchants X5 or Brad, and learns what's going on and decides to come and help.
Yeah, and they end up going and confronting General Vox, who is hiding out in some weird splinter timeline, using it as a base of operations, and they're jumping to the rogue timelines from there. There's a bunch of hunters all jumping back and forth, you see in the scene, and they're, with the bombs, they're purging all these rogue timelines, and Loki and Sylvie are able to stop it before they finish the job. Yeah. So we see though that all the rogue timelines on the TV screen that's in the TVA,
most of them are gone.
Most of them are gone, with a small exception of a handful that are left behind. The other big plot of this is Obi is trying to fix the loom. If we remember from episode 1, that there's so many of these rogue timelines now that the loom is having a hard time collapsing them into one sacred timeline and managing them. And Loki convinced him, well, maybe we can find a way for you to kind of support these rogue timelines as well. And he said, oh yeah, I just have to retrofit the loom to kind of manage it. I think I can figure it out. So he thinks he's figured it out, but he goes into the loom room and realizes that he doesn't have authority to do the reset or to change things. There's only two people who have that authority. Miss Minutes, who's been missing.
Yeah.
We don't know where she is. Yeah. She's gone.
Well, we're getting the clue. I think they've alluded to the fact that Miss Minutes is an AI system that was built by
He Who Remains.
He Who Remains, yeah. And worked for him.
And she left with Ravonna Renslayer and has been helping her hide on some of these rogue timelines from the TVA. So she's gone. So the whole staff of the TVA has been doing everything manually because Miss Minutes isn't there to run things anymore. Or you have to have the temporal aura of He Who Remains, and without He Who Remains, he can't open the blast doors won't open anymore, and he can't get out there. So they have a problem, and they got to figure out a way. And I think the trailers have given us an indication that we're going to see a version, the Victor Timely version of He Who Remains, come back and help them out. So,
what are your thoughts on Loki as a whole?
So I have a lot of theories about what's going on here, and I mentioned this to you over the weekend. I think this entire season is a time cycle within the show, and kind of like if you think about Lost, for example, is that there were things that would happen in the show that in later episodes people would go back in time to make those things happen that happened episodes earlier, right? And so I do believe we've seen a number of instances already in the first 2 episodes of things that have occurred because of some outside influence that we don't know where that outside influence came from. And I believe it's the people in the show now that in the future will realize they have to go back in the past to fix things or that they mess up, and that's the influence. Like Loki being purged in episode 1, I believe Loki purged himself, realizing in like 3 or 4 episodes he's going to have to go back in time to the TVA to purge himself so that he can, be where he is today, right? Yeah. So I think that's happening a lot. I also think, and you and I talked about this a little bit last week, I also think many of the characters in the show are other people, either past versions or future versions of themselves. Uh-huh. So I believe Hunter X5, highly likely, he's the child of Sylvie and Loki. Like, he's Sylvie and Loki's child. And there's some allusions to this, like Brad Wolf. So in the comic books, Loki's Fenris Wolf is Loki's child. The big wolf that was in Ragnarok. Yeah. So the Fenris Wolf is Loki's child. And so to have a person named Brad Wolf kind of is an allusion to maybe that's his child. Nice. And we saw the weird relationship with him and General Vox.
Yeah.
I think General Vox is an older version of Sylvie. She's realized, what's happened, what went wrong, and is trying to now fix things or correct things or reset things so that she can live a normal life again because she doesn't want to be part of this anymore. So I think that's who that is. I think the kid that works at McDonald's is actually Mobius. Huh. I think in this episode we got a good scene of Mobius and Loki in the automat eating a piece of key lime pie. And Loki's like, don't you want to know what your life was, where you came from, what your timeline was like, what your life was before you came here? And he goes, no, I don't. I enjoy my life now. I'm happy to be an analyst. I like working here. I like what I... And he said, if I met the person that brought me here, I'd shake his hand and thank him because I don't know where I came from, nor do I care. I think I'm happy to be here. And I think he was pulled out of that timeline, that rogue timeline, working at McDonald's and brought to the TVA. And I do believe it's possible that will happen in a future episode, that we'll see in a later episode. Loki will go back to that timeline and pull him out of that McDonald's and bring him to the TVA and sit him down in the desk, say, you're our new analyst, wipe your memory, give you a new name and everything else. So I think that's a lot of what's going on here. And it is a very strange and confusing show, but I do think it's very cool. The ideas of they're using time. So they always told us that the TV sat and operated outside of time. It was like in its own time bubble.
Right.
Yet we've seen Loki traverse time within the TVA several times already, which is strange.
Impossible, yeah.
Not supposed to happen. So I do think it's really an interesting concept, and I hope that we're going to see it will pay dividends going forward. But I think some of these theories have some credence.
It's smart, and I love the characters, and that's what's holding it together for me, are the characters and the way the characters interact. And I think that's the best part of the show. The fact that it's very complicated and it intertwines time and the space continuum and all those timelines and the sacred timeline and branches and pruning this, and I think it's very, very confusing, and I just hope they kind of clean all that up by the end of this, and I think they will.
Look, we know this show has, theoretically, is going to have some broad sweeping implications on future projects. We know that the TVA is going to be featured in Deadpool 3. Yeah. We know, Owen Wilson is in that movie. We know that the TVAs and Miss Minutes are going to be playing a role in that movie. So we know the TVA is not going anywhere. So what ends up happening at the end of the season to kind of lead us into that, right? And I believe that we will have some allusions to Deadpool 3 by the end of this. We have a feeling that the TVA will play a role in Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars eventually, and what's going on, setting those things up. So that's what I'm very interested in seeing over the next several episodes is how is what's happening now going to feed into those future projects.
Yeah, I mean, if Kang Dynasty happens at all.
Yeah.
We can get into that a little later. But any word on Jonathan Majors and his...
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, from what we understand, that
I haven't seen or heard a thing.
The last that happened back, I believe it was early September. He had a court date, was granted an extension or a continuance, and I think he's back later this month in court. However, I know that his legal team has very much said that they have enough evidence right now to get the charges dropped and have him exonerated. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a broad sweeping kind of belief that he will be exonerated from these charges and that it was kind of a witch hunt on behalf of this person, this ex-girlfriend of his, and that he will be exonerated, which I think is a good thing. But yeah, no big news has come out yet, but I think Marvel's played it smart. I mean, they've been really quiet about it, kind of letting it play out in the courts and not really doing or saying much. They kind of distanced themselves, at least initially, from it when it first happened. But now that more evidence has come out, I think they're comfortable with Jonathan Majors and keeping him around. So, I mean, who knows? But yeah, we'll see.
Well, they thought Quantumanium was going to be a huge hit with centered around Kang, and that didn't turn out. So I hope they have big plans. I hope they know what they're doing. So we'll see.
Which we'll talk about in our topic of the week. All right, let's get in the news section. A couple of things I did want to talk about this week. We did get a new trailer for the Marvels. Marvel Studios is ramping up the marketing behind this movie. The pre-sales have been lackluster. I think you have to say
the least.
You've got some initial statistics around the pre-sales.
Yeah.
They're lagging behind significantly from other Marvel properties in regards to ticket sales, advanced sales of tickets for the movie.
Yeah.
The box office, I guess, opening weekend projections for this movie are not good.
No.
They are
$50 million.
Trying to be pretty much on the low side.
Very low.
And that does use some of that pre-sale data along with some historical Marvel movie-based stuff and timelines, time of the year and what else is going on. But look, this movie's been set up for success. A lot of the other movies that are going to be released around this movie have left and delayed to future times. Like Dune, for example, is one of the big ones that kind of got out early. So they're not going to have any competition in the theaters. But the pre-sales indicators are not good for this movie.
Unless a lot of people are going to make a game time decision like I am. I mean,
yeah. Well, we're going to see it because we want to review it for our show.
Of course, we're definitely going to see it.
But are we going to rush to see it at 7 o'clock on Thursday night? Probably not.
That was the only showtime that I looked. I looked at every showtime for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I looked at every showtime in 2 theaters. Just to take a kind of a gauge on what ticket sales were going to be like in our local area, and they were not good. Thursday night at 7, there was probably the most tickets, but plenty of seats available. The rest of it
halfway sold or something.
Not even halfway sold. There were maybe 20 seats that were sold, maybe, and there were plenty of seats left for that show, and that was the most. A handful, 6, 2, 1, no ticket sales whatsoever at a lot of the times. Saturday, the matinees were completely wide open. And I'll tell you this, Guardians 3, the show that I looked at for Guardians 3 was so full, I couldn't get a good seat. We had to actually move the time that we saw that movie because the time that we wanted to go was completely not sold out, but there were really shitty seats left.
Right.
But not this movie. So that always gives you a kind of a pit in your stomach, like,
well, and we good. Know, and again, I don't want them to use this as an excuse, even though they will. But we know the actor strike is still ongoing. highly likely that they may not even have a red carpet premiere for this movie if the actors are still on strike. There's no reason
but does
to.
that really boost ticket sales?
No, it doesn't.
No,
It doesn't. It's free promotion. It's basically
it
what
is free promotion, and I get that, and there's a lot to say towards that, but really, is that what's going to kill this movie?
No. Again, it's an excuse at that point in
is
time.
it a big excuse?
But the fact that again, Brie Larson and Tiana Paris and are not going out on and going on Jimmy Kimmel or whatever to kind of promote their movie. That does have an impact. Is it the reason why this movie's not going to do well? No. But one thing I did want to mention, a new trailer did just come out here yesterday, and I don't know if you caught this in the trailer. At the end of the trailer, one of the girls, I'm not really sure which one it is, but one of the girls says, "I called a friend." And you see what looks like
the Bifrost
mm-hmm. being projected into a ship, and the trailer cuts out right when it would show us the person that bifrosted into the ship.
Interesting.
So it seems like a resident of Asgard may be making an appearance in this movie. We don't know who that is.
Yeah.
We know who has the ability to create the Bifrost, but
of course. That'll be interesting. That'll be very interesting. Asgard is no more, though, right?
Right. Well, New Asgard is.
New Asgard, okay.
Right, yeah. So, anyway, so that's where we're on Ms. Marvel. Recently, Marvel... So every time that Marvel is going to be releasing properties, whether it's movies or television shows, they have to apply for copyrights. And these copyrights protect them against potential infringement and... people using the names of these projects and other materials without their knowledge or consent and all these other things. So these copyright applications were made public here recently, and we did get some indications of release dates, and that's kind of what happens when they apply for these copyrights. And interestingly enough, and these were some of the rumors we had heard earlier, no official announcements from Marvel, but it looks like X-Men 97 will be released to Disney Plus in the January 3rd, I believe it is, of 2024, right after the new year, and that Echo is planned to be released on Disney Plus. I believe it's the 24th or something like that. So, like 3 weeks later, which is good news. I mean, the fact that we're continuing to get content. You and I've talked about this. Look, the projects that were in the can, like Echo, the animated-based projects that don't require, continuous reshoots and access to the actors to get out, like X-Men 97, What If Season 2, and others, I think we're going to get those. One other thing that we talked about this past weekend as well, if you guys haven't seen this, Marvel is releasing Werewolf by Night back to Disney Plus October 20th, I think it is, in full color. So the original Werewolf by Night special presentation last year was in black and white. I thought it was
only partially colored.
Yeah, there was a very subtle coloring in certain areas, like the Bloodstone was red and things like that, right? But now they are releasing a full color version of that and bringing it back out for Halloween. Brilliant. I mean, I'll watch it again.
Yeah, I'll watch it again.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that was a very good project. Special presentation. I thought it was great. Yeah. So bring it back. But anyway, so glad to see that we're going to still be getting some content on Disney Plus, even though the movie engine may be on pause right now with the actors' strike. And from what you told me a couple days ago, it doesn't look like any real momentum is being made in the negotiation side with the actors. Correct?
Yeah, I think the studio walked away from the negotiation tables again. I think they're at some pretty big impasses, and the studios this time aren't really willing to give as much as they did for the writers, which is kind of normal, I would say. At this point in time, why kind of bend and fold as a studio at this point when really nothing's going on? I mean, it's still lagging behind all the writers, trying to get back to work, try to get back into the writer's room, try to conform to the new rules that they've set up in their new contract. So but yeah, the actors, man, you got to pay them. You definitely got to pay them. And I think another big sticking point is AI. I think AI is a huge sticking point for the actors and the studios. So that'll be interesting.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what or if comes out of the strike negotiations. I mean, look, everything's on hold right now. I mean, until it's over, we're really. I think everybody, all the network shows are on pause. Everything's on pause. I think once the writers came back to work, all the late night shows came back because the hosts are not officially actors; they're hosts, right? And they couldn't do it without the writers, obviously, and so now they're back. But all the network television shows, I think there were a couple network shows that had some episodes filmed prior to the strike that they're now releasing, but a lot of the big ones are not coming back until the strike's over. Right. So here's some really good news, though. One thing that we've been looking forward to a lot, we know that Invincible Season 2 is coming to Amazon Prime the first week in November. We got a full trailer for Season 2
that's pretty sick.
A couple days ago, and
I did not know they were going to lean so heavily on the multiverse, like their version of the multiverse and different dimensions.
You got a little bit of that in the trailer.
Oh, yeah. Well,
the one guy who has access to multiple dimensions.
Yeah,
and everything else
was saying that.
Talking to who are the two twins? The I can't remember their names.
The brothers.
Yeah, the blue guys who. Yeah. He's talking to them, but we see Invincible kind of dealing with the aftermath of Omni-Man attacking him and then leaving, and he's kind of coming to grips with wanting to get back out there and be a hero again and help people again. He's pleading with what's the name of the guy who runs the CIA type of
Charles?
No, it's
I know the bald
I'll
old
pull
guy.
it. Yeah. Walter Goggins does his voice. Rufus? Is it Rufus? It's something like that. But he's pleading with him. He's like, hey, you got to let me get back out there. Let me get back out there. But then at one point in time, you see Invincible on like a big screen in like Times Square and saying, people of Earth, if you don't comply, we'll make you comply, and it's like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like him. And to your point, it may be an alternate version of him from somewhere else, right? That they pulled in from a different dimension. So, look, we can't wait. The show, the first season was fantastic. And even the Adam Eve special they came out with a couple of months ago was really, really well done. Got a little idea behind her kind of history and backstory. I'm looking forward to this coming back. It's going to be great.
November 5th.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it too.
Yeah, that's going to be a great week for us. We're going to have 3 episodes of content to review: Loki, Gen V, and Invincible. It's going to be a really good week.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into our topic of the week, brought to us by our friends over at Studio G.
G Studio, Studio G, home of the man band, corn on the cob.
Thanks for your help with everything you do for us, Studio G. Appreciate you supporting the show. So we wanted to talk about the massive shakeup going on over at Marvel Studios right now. They've made some announcements here recently that are shocking, surprising, but in some ways refreshing, I guess you could say. Yeah. And we got some insights to what's going on over there that I did want to allude to. Look, the fact of the matter is, you and I and everybody are aware that the recent content that we've been getting from Marvel is not up to the standards that we as consumers have come to expect.
Yeah.
I'll say everything, not everything, most everything that we got in Phase 1, 2, and 3 for Marvel, all the way up to Avengers Endgame. Well, I guess officially, Spider-Man Far From Home is still part of Phase 3. I think all of that was incredibly well received, incredibly well done. Things we were very excited for. Even the projects that weren't great were still good. I mean, they were. I mean, we
they still moved the narrative forward and the storylines forward,
and some of them did well in the box office too.
Did,
I mean, even if they weren't highly popular, but ever since Phase 4, and look, I will caveat this with a couple of things. Look, we know the COVID-19 pandemic had a massive effect on this entire industry, not just Marvel, but the movie industry, the television industry in general was affected by this. I mean, everybody, the whole world was affected by the pandemic, and the impacts of that were definitely felt in this industry. And we can draw some conclusions to some of the things that were brought out during that time period by Marvel. There were projects that were filmed or made prior to the pandemic that were delayed in being released because of the pandemic. There were projects that were filmed during the pandemic that were delayed in production, and they had massive rewrites and some scheduling conflicts and all kinds of other things. We know that had an impact. And so I don't want to discount that. There's absolutely some truth to that. That being said,
I mean, the whole story of Falcon and Winter Soldier had to be changed because it dealt with a pathogen or a virus that was released, and they had to switch all that up.
A global pandemic.
Yeah.
It was a global pandemic,
Yeah.
and they basically
During the
were like,
pandemic.
and they were like, yeah, this is not going to fly with our audience, and so they had to do some massive rewrites.
Maybe
there.
they should have, though, looking back on that in retrospect. Maybe they shouldn't have been so PC and just thrown caution to the wind and not be so afraid to release something that they felt was
in
a
hindsight,
home run.
that might have been a good move, right?
Right.
I mean, but at the time, nobody knew what. I mean, the COVID-19 pandemic at the time could have proved to be cataclysmic.
Yep.
It could have proved to be, the worst thing since the bubonic plague or the Black Plague or whatever. It could have been really. It was bad, but it ended up tapering off over time.
Well, based on the information that was given to us and based on some false facts and based on some questionable science that was being thrown at the public, it was
doomsday.
It was doomsday. This is it. This is going to end the world. Lock yourselves inside. Wear a mask. Bubble wrap your whole face. Come on. So anyway, now we know a little bit better and moving forward.
Yeah, but I think at the time they made the decisions with the information they had. They were just being cautious.
Of course.
But even in retrospect, if I look at that series, that's a good example of one. Love the actors. Love the chemistry between them. The story struggled because of the rewrites.
Yes.
There were some misses, but
the villain was not compelling.
Right, but the production value was great.
Yes.
The acting was very good.
Yeah.
I agree. The plot struggled, but I enjoyed watching it. I mean, I did. I enjoyed it.
Oh yeah.
That being said, there have been some big misses, some massive misses by Marvel here in Phase 4 and Phase 5, and they know this. So much so that they're very open about this internally, and they know there's a problem, and they are doing everything they can right now to fix it. And a lot of this information came from, there's a new book that's coming out here shortly called The Reign of the MCU, and it's being written by an author, Joanna Robinson, and she just recently went on a podcast called The Watch, and if you haven't listened to this episode, you should. It's very compelling. So go listen to The Watch podcast with the episode with Joanna Robinson. So she's writing this book, and she's got obviously some inside access at Marvel, and she basically came out and said Marvel's aware there's a problem. They're doing everything they can to fix it, and they're doing midstream course corrections right now to get back on track with what we as the consuming audience, and you and I've talked about this, Titanium. There's the diehards like you and me who love this stuff, and even the bad stuff, we're going to go see it because we love this stuff and whatever. And then there's the kind of like our wives and our extended families that kind of get it from us, and they're going to go with us, and And then there's the people out there that know nothing about us, and we're trying to draw them in.
Right.
And I think Marvel has recently been focusing way too much on the audience that they don't have, that they're forgetting the audience that they do have, and they're not catering their content to that audience, even though it was extremely successful doing that early on in their movies, right?
Yeah, forgetting their fan base and going after a very small percentage of fans that, yes, are important, but will not drive ticket numbers or profits. They just won't. They're fringe comic book fanatics, and then there's another group that's more of what I call the novice. And for people that are comic book fanatics, and Marvel Comics itself went down this route by trying to diversify and change a lot of the stories and change characters and gender swap and do this and that. That's fine. Write good characters. Female characters, all about them. But write good female characters. Don't take Captain America and turn him into a woman. Write a strong female Captain America like character and do it that way instead of trying to and I think a lot of the comics, Marvel Comics, did that, and that the sales of comics plummeted. And I think that now the MCU has gotten into that where they've lost track of who their target audience is. If you want these movies to be successful, and we've talked about this, cater to the comic book fans, the diehard fans, and have some appeal to the novice. Don't go after these niche groups of people that you're trying to pull in, because they're not the majority of the people that are going to. They're not what made Avengers. They're not what made Infinity War or Endgame big, huge blockbusters. It was the novice fans, while catering to the comic book fanatics like ourselves. So get back on track with that, and that's how you fix the MCU. Get back to great story writing. Focus on A-level characters, not C or D-level characters that no one asked you to write a movie about. You have this inside agenda that you feel like, Bumblebee Blue is a great character and should have a starring role in a mega movie. No one's asking for a Bumblebee Blue movie. Get back to your core value, core characters, and expand on those. And there's plenty of them. I know you went through Iron Man, you went through Captain America, you went through all these other characters that have died off or you've moved on from. But there are still plenty of core characters that you can focus on.
Well, I think Disney Plus has proven to be a very difficult thing for them to navigate, and it's hard to quantify. Look, with movies, we have box office totals, which we'll talk about here shortly. But with Disney Plus shows, it's hard to quantify the impact they have, whether it's new subscribers or number of watches and all those other things. I don't know how they quantify the return on investment there, but we know as an audience there were some big hits. Loki season 1, huge hit. WandaVision was a huge hit. Yeah. We know there were some big hits, but there have been a huge number of flops. The most recent one, Secret Invasion, massive flop. Yeah. And Marvel was just taken aback by how bad it was received and how badly it was panned by the viewing audience and the critics alike. She-Hulk, massive failure. While there were a couple of episodes that were interesting, the whole series was just a massive failure. Yeah. Ms. Marvel, while Marvel claims how well that series has done, you and I both know it did not do well domestically. They farmed it out to all these overseas audiences to kind of make their money back. They put it on ABC television to make their money back, and they're claiming it how well it's been received. They are literally shoving it down the throats of the worldwide audience. They didn't do that with all their other projects, but they did it with that one because they wanted to make sure everybody saw it. Yeah. But we know there were some massive misses. And they realized that they need to fix the way that they're doing these Disney Plus shows. One of the huge announcements that came out here recently was Daredevil Born Again, which we know was supposed to come out next year, has been completely shelved and is going to start over from scratch.
Kudos, Feige.
Yeah, so that series had already started filming before the writer strike and the actor strike. And they had filmed roughly 8 to 10 hours of content for that series. Now, this was supposed to be an 18 episode, two different sections of this series, 18 episodes. They filmed about 8 to 10 episodes already. Yeah. And they scrapped it all. Yeah. They said it's terrible. So Kevin Feige, during the strikes, went back and said, I want to see what you've come up. I want to see all the footage that you filmed for this. He watched it all and said, no. Yeah. Get rid of it all. It's terrible.
The story, the writing. Apparently, rumor has it is that Daredevil, Charlie Cox, didn't even show up in costume till the 4th episode, which means you had a legal drama or some kind of story.
Well, let's get into why. And here's this has been reported. We know that the original Daredevil series had 2 really big supporting characters. That's the series that was on Netflix. Yeah. Karen Page and Foggy Nelson. Mm-hmm. Foggy Nelson's his legal partner, his best friend. Karen Page is their legal aide, and she's a big character. in Daredevil comic books as well. One or both of them was killed off early in this new Daredevil Born Again season, which caused him to give up the suit. Mm-hmm. And he said, I can't keep putting my people I love in danger, so I can't keep going out as Daredevil. And he gave up the suit and spent the first 4 episodes, to Tony's point, as Matt Murdock, the lawyer. And Kevin Feige saw this and said, this is supposed to be Daredevil Born Again. You know, it can't take 4 episodes for him to put the suit back on.
Yeah, crazy.
And the Born Again, they took the Born Again too literally of, hey, we're going to knock him down and we're going to have to build him back up from scratch and give him a reason why he needs to put the suit back on. So anyway, Feige scrapped it, said it's done.
Great.
We're starting over.
Great.
And I believe the writer's strike had a big part of this, is that the writers who wrote that script for that show, they went on strike. And he's like, oh, I don't like this. Let's just get new people in here.
Yeah.
You know, we got a reset button. Let's just hit it and done. Imagine the amount of money they lost just hitting the reset button. But you know what? To your point, credit to Kevin Feige, recognizing it's not what we want as an audience. It's not the quality that Marvel's known for. We're going to redo it. You had a great idea this weekend, Tony. You said, why don't they just hire the writers who wrote the original Netflix shows? They were great. The 3 seasons that we got on Netflix were fantastic.
Yeah, I think we were going back and forth with somebody on X about that, and it would be too easy. It would make too much sense. Too much sense. So,
but I mean, I think that was one project. We also got this. Joanna Robinson did allude to the fact that there were 2 other projects. Visionquest, which we knew was softly announced. It was kind of projected as a future project, that we were going to get a kind of a follow-up project to WandaVision, letting us know what happened to the White Vision at the end of WandaVision, and kind of following where we're going to kind of see maybe the formation of the West Coast Avengers, all that other stuff. That's been scrapped. They have postponed it indefinitely or have completely canceled it. The Wonder Man series had started filming prior to the strikes. They've indefinitely delayed that one as well, saying, we're not doing that right now.
Yeah.
And what it comes down to is, I think that they've realized they need to change how they're making these episodic shows on Disney Plus. What they tried to do was take the tried and true proven formula of making Marvel movies and translate it to Marvel television products on Disney Plus. And so, for example, if Falcon and Winter Soldier or Loki season 1 was a 6-hour, venture, well, we're just going to make 3 2-hour movies, or we're just going to make a 6-hour movie and chop it up into 6 pieces. And that's what they did. They ran it like a movie set. They ran it like a movie. They had an entire script. They filmed it like a movie, and then they just chopped it up into different episodes. And they're like, that's not how you run a television show. You have a showrunner. You film a pilot. And then you film canned episodes one by one, and you might have a cliffhanger at the end of one episode, and then you start off with the next episode.
Yeah.
They're changing the way that they're doing Disney Plus episodes, and I think more power to them.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a lot of these projects are either delayed significantly or being redone in how they're doing it. And I give credit to Kevin Feige and Marvel. Kevin Feige was heavily involved in every movie that was being made by Marvel all the way up until Endgame. And then once Phase 4 started, they had movie projects and Disney Plus projects. He's one person. He can't be involved in everything. So he had to kind of give up some of that control and oversight to other people. Some of those people did not follow through with what he thought they could, right?
And some of those people are no longer with Marvel.
Yeah, what is it, Victoria Alonso or whatever?
Yeah, I think she was a big influencer on the direction. Whenever she had that interview and she said, I think X-Men is outdated. There were a lot of women in that group. Why are we calling them X-Men? That needs to be changed. I was like, what? That's not the point.
It's just, you're so out of touch.
So
out of touch.
Let's get rid of the word X-Men because it has man in it, or men in it. That's insane. Again, you're alienated this huge group of mega fans that the novice will lop onto the mega fans. I just anyway.
So I mean, look, I want to go through some of this because I pulled some data before the show tonight, and I want to talk through this. And this is the root of the problem.
I'll put it up on screen for the YouTube viewers.
So this is the root of the problem. So I've got the box office returns for every movie that Marvel's released to the theaters. There are some outliers here, and what I'll say is, I'm going to talk about return on investment, right? So we know the box office returns for, we know that Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War are in the top 5 highest grossing movies of all time. I mean, and Spider-Man No Way Home is up there now too, right? I think it's number 6 or 5 or 6. It's up there now too. I mean, these movies were highly successful in the box office. They did great. But I want to look at like the return on the investment. So what did it cost you to make the movie, and what did the movie make? And then ultimately, you have your ranking of return on investment, right? What's the percentage of your
ROI.
money back, your ROI, right? Mm-hmm. So, and there are outliers. Some of the early movies Marvel made in the early stages of the MCU, right? Like The Incredible Hulk, the one with the original one with Edward Norton. That's the lowest ROI that they've gotten of any project they ever come out with. That was a phase 1 movie, one of the first, and it was, again, a Universal Studios project that was, made by Marvel Studios in cooperation with Marvel Studios, but that was very early. It was the second movie that Marvel made. It was right after Iron Man 1, right? So, understandably, they lost some money on that one, right? And Edward Norton didn't come back. We know kind of what happened with that story. Captain America: The First Avenger. That is number 30, 28 on the list of 32 movies, right? So, that's the first Captain America movie. The first Thor movies, 26. Iron Man 2 is number 24. So, again, these are very early projects. So, they're outliers, right? So, I don't want to, talk too much about those. There are some successes in Phase 4, right? So, as we mentioned, Spider-Man No Way Home was released during the pandemic, right? It was released, in December of 2021. It was a massive success.
Yeah.
In spite of the pandemic.
Right.
It was a massive success. It made $1.9 billion in the theaters worldwide. $1.9 billion, $814 million domestically. So here in the U.S. had a $260 million opening weekend. Mm-hmm. That's just massive numbers. And that just shows you the popularity of the Spider-Man character as well as the story. Mm-hmm. It was, to this day, Titanium, it's one of our favorite movies, right? It's fantastic. That's number 1 in ROI. It made 950% of its budget. So it cost $200 million to make that movie, and it made $1.9 billion. So did pretty well. So that's a Phase 4 movie that did well. Another phase.
The Marvels, I believe the projection of Marvels is $250 million to make. Woo, that's going to be a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, and again, we have to take these numbers and have some relativity to these numbers too, right? We have had things like inflation, right? So the cost of making movies has gone up. Sure. The cost, of production has gone up. So what it costs to make a movie back in 2010 is very different than what it costs to make a movie in 2023.
Correct.
Right? So we have to be subjective about this a little bit.
There are factors involved.
Right.
Not responsible for any numbers that are out of whack.
The only other Phase 4 movie, Phase 4 or Phase 5 movie, that's in the top 21 movies in ROI is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. That movie was a box office success, while was critically panned a little bit by both, the core audience and some of the critics, right? Didn't do very well critically, but it was a 478% return. It cost $200 million to make and made $955 million worldwide.
Yeah.
Did pretty well, pretty successful. And I think a lot of that was the time of the year it came out. We were kind of it was right after Spider-Man Far From Home. Yeah. Really, it was early the next year. We were like waiting for this movie to come out. So that was a Phase 4 project. Every other Phase 4 and Phase 5 movie that's been released by Marvel, and I'll list them off here, are ranked between number 22 and number 31 in return on investment. So at number 22 is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, 344% ROI. Cost $250 million to make, made $860 million in worldwide box office. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, fantastic movie.
Great movie.
We loved it. Did not do great in the theaters. It was a 338% return on investment, made $845 million worldwide, $250 million to make. Thor Love and Thunder, number 25, 304% return on investment. It made $760 million in the theaters, cost $250 million to make. And it only had, and by the way, Guardians of the Galaxy only had $118 million in its opening weekend. $118 million. That's pretty low, right? Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, again, a movie that came out during the pandemic, right? So this was literally in the fall of 2021, right? So everybody was afraid to leave their homes, right? So excuses there. 288% return on investment. Number 27, $432 million worldwide. It cost $150 million to make. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Arguably one of the biggest disappointments, both by Marvel. Marvel thought Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was a home run.
Yeah.
They thought they had a home run with the movie, with the characters, with Kang the Conqueror as the main villain.
Yeah.
They thought they were going to hit it out of the park. 237% return on investment, number 29 out of 32. 29 out of 32. It made $474 million worldwide, cost $200 million to make, made $106 million in its opening weekend. That is very, very low. The Eternals, again, another COVID pandemic release, was made before the pandemic, was released during the pandemic. Only 200% return on investment, number 30, $402 million, cost $200 million to make. And then the worst, and likely the one impacted by the pandemic the most, number 31 on your list of 32 released movies to the theater, Black Widow, 190% return on investment, cost $200 million to make that movie. $200 million. And it made $379 million in worldwide box office. $80 million opening weekend.
Wow.
So, and obviously they released that movie in theaters and on Disney Plus simultaneously, Premier Access. Remember, we had to buy it at home or we could go to the theaters to watch it. So that one had, I guess you could call a built-in excuse that they really, kind of knew that they weren't going to get people into the theaters to go see that movie. But I mean, that just goes to show you every one of these projects. Again, two outliers with Spider-Man No Way Home and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. But every other Phase 4 and Phase 5 project so far is in the bottom quarter of movies that Marvel has made ever. Every other movie up here Endgame, Far From Home, Captain Marvel, the original Captain Marvel did very well in the worldwide box office, $1.128 billion. Pretty good, right? But again, that was during the heyday. If you remember, that movie came out between Infinity War and Endgame.
And I still think it missed the mark, but yeah.
Yeah, but it came out between two massive movies and, had a great lead-in. You're like, oh, who was this character? Was in the end credits scene of Infinity War. Right. We got to find out, right? Original Avengers, original Black Panther, Infinity War, Iron Man 3, Age of Ultron. These were home runs.
Yeah.
And they show home runs. The return on investment for all of those movies was over 500%.
Wow.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you guys will see the numbers on the screen. I did some research here, but I mean, the fact of the matter is there is a problem. Either we're not getting what Marvel's trying to do, or Marvel's not getting what we want them to do. Right? And I think they figured out we got to fix the way we're doing things. We got to get back to our core.
At least they're acknowledging that they've moved in the wrong direction, and they're trying to they're trying to redirect and correct the direction of the ship that they're absolutely ridiculous. Oh, what's going on there?
I don't know.
We're good.
All right, we're live.
We're good, yeah.
We're live. Still cooking with gas.
Yeah.
But I think you and I have had these discussions before. I love all the content that's being given to us, and because I love these characters so much, and I want to see them on my television screen. I want to see them on my movie screen. But I get more disappointed by bad content than I would be by waiting for good content.
Agree.
Right? So, as much as it pains me to think that we might only get 2 movies next year, which is highly likely based on what's going on with the strikes and the schedule and shifts and everything else, we might
leave it in the oven. Leave it in the oven. Let it cook longer. Leave it in the oven instead of this half-baked bullshit that no one's asking for.
I think it's largely, we believe that we'll get Deadpool 3 and Captain America 4 next year, and that may be the only 2 movies we get from Marvel. But if they're good, they're going to keep me satisfied. If you have less Disney Plus projects, but the projects you release are good, I'm fine with that. You and I've talked about this before, Titanium. Do a special presentation. You want to introduce us to Wonder Man? You want to tell us what's going on with White Vision? Just do an hour and a half long special presentation. Just give
on
it to
Disney
us.
Plus.
On Disney Plus.
Yeah.
I don't need a 6-episode or 8-episode Disney Plus series to figure that out.
Yeah.
I don't.
Right.
You know. So just I think they have a formula and a path for success. They just need to get back to it. And I'm willing to wait. As much as I hate it, you know, oh man, we might go. I mean, heck, we're going to already go 6 months without a movie, or even more. Who knows? I'm willing to wait for the good stuff to come out. Like, we waited over a year between Infinity War and Endgame, and I couldn't wait to find out what happened. But it was worth it.
Allegedly, the Marvels cost $250 million to make. If their opening weekend, based on pre-sales tickets, is projected at $50 million.
Oh my God.
What does that tell you what's going on?
So that would be $50 million, and again, not adjusting for inflation, $50 million opening weekend would be the smallest domestic opening weekend in Marvel's history. Right now, the smallest opening weekend is that Incredible Hulk movie with Edward Norton, and the second smallest was the original Ant-Man at $57.2 million. So that, if you're at or below 50 million, so if you're below 55, you're not beating out a movie that came out in 2010, 2011.
You know, I don't know. They found out that the vegetable review site was, the studios were paying critics and sliding them cash to kind of favorably talk about and give great scores to their projects.
Shocking.
So I don't believe anything that's on there. I mean, Miss Marvel is the highest rated Disney Plus show on the vegetable site, and that's full of horse shit. I think they paid a lot of people, and they sent links to teeny boppers that were watching that show. I love that actress, don't get me wrong. I think she is adorable and a great actress. I just don't think she's a lead in a giant blockbuster. I think she's a support.
Well, look,
character.
I mean, and again, one of the illusions is that by the time we get to Secret Wars, and again, the way the schedule's mapping out now, that's going to be 2028, 2027, 2028 before we get Marvel Secret Wars. I mean, gosh, some of these actors they want to bring back for that are probably going to be using
in their
walkers.
80s, yeah.
They're going to be using walkers by then. Well, heck, Harrison Ford, who's going to be in the new Captain America movie, is 80. It's like Christ. But by the time we get that movie, they are saying that is going to be the massive reset button for Marvel. I think the characters they want to retain, the actors they want to retain, they will. Like, whoever they cast as a Fantastic Four isn't going anywhere. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you are, I think Ms. Marvel, Iman Vellani, is probably going to... She's young enough, she's probably going to stick around for a while. I think
love to see her in Young Avengers.
Yeah, I think Shang-Chi's going to stick around for a while.
Yeah.
I think he's not going anywhere. So some of the newer actors who have been cast in some of these roles will probably stick around post Secret Wars. But all of the old guard of the MCU, all of the old, obviously Fox characters, the X-Men characters, they're going to be gone. And they'll be able to recast all of those roles, right? The Iron Mans, the Captain Americas. And Secret Wars will just be able to recast it all. We can start over from scratch. I do believe that might be the end of Tom Holland as Spider-Man as well. I think that will be kind of his last Spider-Man projects. Will be Secret Wars.
They'll reboot this,
and they'll recast him as well, right? He's just too popular. You can't not do that. But I think that's the massive reset button they're looking for. Very similar to what James Gunn's doing over at DC right now. They're just going to hit reset and just start over from scratch.
Yeah.
And I think they'll retain the actors and actresses that they want to retain, and then they'll just recast the rest and use Secret Wars as an excuse.
Do you think they'll bag Ironheart?
I think at this point in time, they're highly confused at how
that fits into the larger picture.
Right. And what that was supposed to come out this year originally. We know it's not coming out next year now and may be delayed another year. And I think that they believe that project does have a place in the larger picture because they wouldn't have made it to begin with. I think they're trying to figure that out. But I mean, that one we know they filmed a significant amount of that show already.
It's almost done.
Yeah.
It's completely done. I think they're waiting for reshoots for the actors to come back and do some reshoots.
But I don't know, and maybe that's another one that Kevin Feige
Echo.
looks at.
Jeez, they filmed that for forever ago.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, Professor. Well, let's ring the bell. School's over.
All right. Well, that's it for us this week. We'll be back next week for more Super Talk. To get in touch with us on social media, hit us up via email, supertalkpodcast@outlook.com, or at supertalkpod on Twitter. Until then, stay super, everyone.
And we're out. Woo! Barn burner. Thanks, YouTube. Like and subscribe if you're still there.
Everyone likes this game. Haters gonna hate. And I know you can't wait to see the Black Viper. Round and round she goes. Hardly no one knows.